Hello, everyone, and welcome. Yes, my name is Arafire, and today on this episode of All Talk No Shock, I am joined by Pete from Transformers the Show.
All talk, no shock.
Pete, thanks for coming on. Today, we are going to talk about, is there too much choice in collecting of Transformers? With the waves that are out there, there seems to be an endless supply of reissues or figures from before, and reincarnations of figures that the modern day collector may not have space for. So, Pete, this was your topic and suggestion, a very good one at that. Do you simply think there is too much choice at the moment as a Transformers collector?
I think, and I'm going to be quite diplomatic with, I think, with my words, because in the modern world, as consumers, we want choice. Okay. But I think we're getting to a point where do you really need like 5 or 6 iterations of a figure, all slightly different? I mean, I always look at it that you've got Hasbro, obviously, Hasbro's probably, leading the way as the owner, the owner of the brand and stuff. But the amount of, I think, third party companies, you go back 5 years, maybe 7 or 8 years, you've probably got triple the amount of, if not more, of third party companies available now. And I think I'm torn because I want the choice. But on the flip side, how many versions of a character do you need?
It's very true. When you look at some of the more household names of a Prime, Soundwave, Starscream, Grimlock, what's your choice? What's your scale? What's your range? What's your budget? And you can go anything from statues to masterpiece to core class. And if you were to say, if you were a collector of one particular one, like I know a lot of people just have like Optimus Prime collections, it just goes on. It's almost too much. But as you rightly say, third-party companies have just come on. And Hasbro's not the only gig in town anymore, even though Hasbro are quite happy to churn out many versions of the same figure, like the Earthrise Optimus Prime. That's been used time and time again in repaints. And I think, as you say, like, choice is good, but when it comes down to, do you think like there's a sense of when a new release comes up, a lot of chug collectors feel the need just to buy it because it's a new thing? It might not even be something they want. It's just, shiny new toy.
Massively. And I would put myself in that category sometimes because I've got characters. I don't know. Let's take, for example, Metalhawk, Legacy Metalhawk. I've got no affinity to the character. I got him because he came out in that wave, and I wanted to get him. He looked quite a cool bot. I've now got him. He's at the back of the shelf. Why did I get him? Why? Once I've transformed them a couple of times, I almost have them in 2 piles, right? And Metalhawk sits in that category where I'll have a character and a bot that I will mess with constantly, and I'll get another one where I play with once, and it'll go on the shelf and as part of the collection. But how many characters and how many waves do you have, or do you get before you go? There's no what? Why are you collecting it? You're collecting it because it's come out.
Yeah, because it's a brand new shiny toy. And I do think Legacy is a bit guilty of this. And I said this at the start. I felt Legacy has given us some nice gems. And the tail end of Kingdom did as well with the Cyclonus and the Rekgar. But I feel now Legacy not having a point is causing a bit of a problem. There's no Combiner Wars where it was all about combiners. There's no Titans Return when it was all about Titans, and there was a bit of a story to it, Enigma, a combination, what have you. Legacy, we got, who's coming through the space bridge next? And it's really whoever the hell you want. And that then leads on to the next point. As you say, you get a figure because it's come out in a wave, it looks good, it looks fun, even if you have no affiliation to the character. And then when you get it, it's like, okay, well, you're sitting on the shelf now. But eventually that builds up to no space.
Yeah, a massive, and I don't want to do anybody a disservice. Certainly, not the designers and the engineers that go to making these mini masterpieces. But I always feel sometimes it's a bit of a flex. It's like why that character? I was like, oh, we can do a good job with that character. Is the fandom crying out for a toy version of that character that they want to play with? I don't know. Probably not.
That's a very good point, because I thought that with the what do I know? Because I thought that with the new third party roller that we've seen, and I think you've got,
Yeah.
at TF Nation, and it's gone down really well. But to the point that you just said, was anyone crying out for a transforming roller? I didn't really hear of it on people's wish lists. But then, what do I know? Because it's gone down well.
But I think what made that popular. Again, it probably wasn't the character. Whilst he did have a stint in IDW, didn't he? But I think the price point, the size, the transformation, it hit a sweet spot. A third party bot for like 40 quid that had the same engineering and stuff. It from a collection piece, you're then going, oh, that fits a price point and it fits a gap in my collection, perhaps. But
Yeah.
where's the but to your point, what I can't remember seeing anything going, we need a masterpiece version of roller and we need it now.
No, it's not like, well, one, and also just because he's in touching distance, but one that makes sense. How long has it been for us to actually get an Alpha Triumph? That's
agreed.
How long has that taken? Don't get me wrong, we got it, it's great. But that's one I would have expected to see. There's still not really a third party offering of this. You can get mods and upgrades, but that's one that really would benefit from a.
But here's a question, right? So here's a question. That Alpha Triumph there, is that not a character that the fandom were crying out for, that perhaps justified its own mold rather than an iteration of the Scourge mold?
It did. I do think that character was always held back by the fact that we don't really know what Alpha Trion's alt mode ever was.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
And I think they said, to your point that you made, a very good one, that circle back to it, is this a flex? Look what we can do. We can finally make an Alpha Trion because we got a good Scourge mold. And he, yes, Alpha Trion could become a Scourge because it's Cybertronian and he never left Cybertron. It does make sense. But then, really, Alpha Trion's alt mode, he could be a crane for all we know. He could be a submarine. Yeah. We wouldn't know.
He wouldn't be a submarine on Cybertron, though, would he?
All right. No. Well, Sea of Rust.
I'm just saying. Well, you don't know. Agree. Yeah. No. That's fine. That's fine. The creator of the Transformers is going to be a submarine.
It could be
not a supercomputer or a bit of factory machinery.
Look, if Perceptor can be a bloody microscope, he could be a submarine. All right.
Well, see, that would make more sense.
Oh, that was a bad idea in 1984.
Anyway. Yeah, agreed. We digress.
So, to the point of multiple waves, and it does seem to be, look, here's the reveals, and everyone gets excited because it's a shiny new toy. And I'm not saying that there aren't good toys in there. I've got the Legacy Optimus Prime, the Armada universe. Love it. That came up. It looked brilliant. Got it. It is brilliant. Very nice. But let's just say the cycle keeps going and people just buy because it's a new wave. It's new engineering. It has that open out of a box fun and excitement. Then exhaustion sets in. And this affects all collectors, whether you're a Transformers collector or whatever. There is such a thing as too much, and people need to have a break. And there isn't a break in Transformers, is there? There isn't an end of season, there might be an end of cycle, but how long was it from War for Cybertron to Kingdom ending to Legacy? And we're supposedly in Legacy Evolution and whatever comes after that. But there is just constant reveals. And again, it's great engineering that's being worked on all the time behind the scenes. You can't catch a breath as a collector unless you choose to make a stop.
And I think that's where I think modern toy production, toy collecting, whichever way you want to describe it. If you think even back to, G1 and then G1.5, G2, I think it was, and other, and other iterations, it was always driven by the media, wasn't it? There was a new cartoon out, right? So you'd get a break between,
The next project.
G1 finishing and then, Beast Wars started.
Yeah.
Okay, so when they knew G1 was coming to an end, they cut the toys off. It'd be well gone out of the toy shops, and then it'd be reloaded. Whereas you're not getting that now,
No,
because there isn't. So it's like you say, it's just a continuing cycle. And if it's selling well, why are you going to introduce a break into it?
It is, and that's why we're looking at it now. It doesn't. They feel they don't need TV like they used to drive toy sales. They feel they can just do consistent waves and rely on nostalgia to carry it through. But I would think surely, and I am focusing more on Chug than third party with this, because third party does not have the volumes that Chug does. But you look at it as, surely that's going to come to a head at some point. You'll get to the point where you will make the perfect Optimus Prime, the perfect Soundwave, the perfect Megatron that you can make with the tools available at the time, and you can't improve on perfection for another 10, 20 years. You would think.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we need to remember, Hasbro's got shareholders, and they need paid and all the rest of it. So I think unless they change the properties, what they need to do is go through the massive character list from 1984 to 2023, and they need to punt out stuff that they think is going to make, some sales and some profit and keep the shareholders happy. The other end of that, the point you're making is, they go, Transformers isn't selling anymore. It's a defunct brand. We're going to stick it in the freezer, and then you suddenly go, which is probably less likely to happen, because you've got the movies still floating around in the background. But that's Hasbro aren't in love with Transformers. Transformers make some money, right? So if you've got a gangrenous limb that's almost going to infect the rest of the body, you cut it off. And what I am always nervous about is, a bit to your point, exhaustion sets in. They've run through all of the characters. They can't really do another Optimus Prime because they've already done 6 in the last 2 waves. There's only so many times you can go to the well with those popular characters, isn't there? You only need, how many do you need? Do you need 3 iterations of Earthrise Prime in different colors?
Exactly. You're going to get to a point, and this is where I feel third party has a bit of a benefit, especially as you rightly say, they operate completely differently. In the masterpiece scale, you still can get exhaustion to a degree, but they do it because they want to do it, and that's why they're infringing on license. Whereas Hasbro are doing it because of shareholders, because of stakeholders, because they own a license that makes them money. So they don't need that. They don't need to stop doing it because they think, oh, that's not fair on the fans. It's just a pure money-making cycle.
Yeah.
But that point that you raised around the break from G1 into G2 to Beast Wars, RID, and then the Unicron trilogy, that was, when you look back at it, that was a really good time, because you had, even us as fans, we didn't lose our love of it, but we had a chance to sort of step away. And then by the time something else came out, well, it got our attention again, didn't it? What's the line? How can I miss you if you don't go away?
Yeah, I agreed. And I think a lot of people said that about, and I don't want to go down another rabbit hole, but a lot of people said that about the comics, right? When IDW Reborn, the last kind of story before IDW lost the license, that back straight on from More Than Meets the Eye and Robots in Disguise. But then when IDW lost the license, it's been barren. There's been nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So you almost get into the limits and go in, has it been too long?
Yeah.
You want to build a bit of interest, you want to build a bit of enthusiasm, but you don't want it to be gone so long you forget about it. You know, it wants to be teetering along in the background, and I think with, you know, certainly, you know, through the 80s, 90s, and even into the early noughties, there was never a massive gap between the media.
I would say the biggest gap you had, and you think of it, was quite a long one. It was well, we're holding now. I'm going to get my years right. Beast Wars finishing sort of around 99, maybe into 2000. Then was it 2001 for RID? Oh, so that's probably right, because then it was 2001, then Unicron trilogy, and then 2007. Probably that was the longest gap, ending of the Unicron trilogy into the 2007 movie. Maybe about sort of 3 years. And I've said this before, the movies, whether you like them or not, they sort of gave the franchise an injection and brought in a new wave of fans. For many people, that was their introduction to Transformers, who never had G1. So a needed injection. But again, we got that consistent flow. Whereas now in Legacy as collectors, we've still got that love of 40-year history. As you say, massive back catalogue of characters. And so then it comes on to, okay, we're getting all of these now. Metal Hawks, we've had Duocons, we, you know, talk of Throttlebots, Pretenders, anyone else falling down the back of the sofa and a shelf for God knows how many years. So where does that leave us then? With exhaustion, with space. I think space for me is becoming a problem, not to mention the shelves I've got here. But choice and goals. So for you as a collector then, how does that depict, for your great display that we can't see on camera, which I've seen before, how does that tailor your collecting habits now?
I think it's a really good question.
Have I asked a rhetorical question?
Yeah, so I'm torn right down the middle, okay, because I will buy the character if I want it. You know, whether it's a retool or a new character or something like that. If I see it and I like it, I'll buy it. But that being said, I've always taken that approach because I've had loads of space. And now space is starting to, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm very fortunate where I've got a bigger collection space than, you know, maybe a lot of people, but it's still not infinite. We're not talking about a TARDIS. There is only so much wall space and floor space, you know, and up around the windows.
Pay the electric bill, Pete.
Yeah. Excuse. Just let me put another.
Throw another wheelie on the fire, mate. That will burn quite well.
Yeah, another 50p in the meter. I didn't want all these first parties that I'm now burning. Rudely interrupted. Can't you see I'm busy? But I think it's going to get to a point. Like, right. So TFN on my hit list was a Combiner Wars Triptychon, right? I didn't see it at a price I was happy to pay, which is fine. But I'm looking around now going, if I bought it, I don't know where I'd have put it. I mean, you will find a space. You'll probably
make for
yeah. But I'm looking around now, you know, and I've got my Titans out here. I've got the big old beast of Unicron. You know, where do I put something of a Titan size now when I get Nemesis?
Yes, because that's the thing. The Titans as well, they take up a huge amount of room.
Yeah.
And it's.
But to your point, my collecting was driven by wanting the character. But I think we're getting to a point where I'm going to be a bit more selective because eventually the space will run out, and it's either you don't get it or it's one in, one out, maybe.
Yeah, and that was going to lead to my next question. Do you, as you say, if it's a character you want, do we finally get an upgrade to something, you know? So I got here, just because you can see him, Rhinox Beast Wars. It's a thrilling 30s one. Eventually, something else will come out. He's got to go because I can't tell you it's not even standing room only in there. that's so compressed towards the back. I can't get any further than that.
Yeah.
But that's what you got to do. And is that the approach now? That
Well, is that what you want? Is that what you want from your collecting? Because I always felt that I wanted to be able to display what I had neatly. Because for me personally, seeing a shelf that's 6 deep of bots that perhaps I don't have an emotional attachment to half of them, for me, that's not collected. It's a bit like I will never be that guy that has a storage unit full of my toys.
No,
it won't go up in my loft. You know, if I can't display it, I don't want it.
Why have it? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want it because you're buying it because it gives you enjoyment. But how can something that's locked away or not locked away, boxed away, out of sight, out of mind, how can that give you enjoyment?
Absolutely. And I think from my side of it is that I always wanted the best version of the characters. That's why I generally have, but not always, I generally have one version of a character, at least to a start.
And that's a good way of doing it. That's a really good way of doing it.
I mean, I've got a couple of primes, but I only have one star screen now.
Yeah.
I've got to work up the courage to transform that back. I've only got one G1 hot rod, but I've got an IDW one as well. So I have a couple of exceptions to the rule, if you like. But generally speaking, I only have one. So like back to the point of Rhinox, Thrilling 30s ones is all well and good. It's better than the Kingdom one. But eventually, a very long way down the line, there'll be a Masterpiece one, and I don't need to have two of them. I certainly haven't got the space for two of them. So he'll go, and Masterpiece one will sit there, and probably won't be enough room, and he'll fall on the floor. But yeah, it's. I think when you look at it, it sounds like a bit of a moan, but it's a real problem. But it's not a moan at the same time. It's a bit gluttonous, maybe. How there's so much coming out. We're spoilt for choice. Great to have the choice, but then we're eating all the choice, and then we can't house all the choice to the point we sell the choice.
It's almost when I talk about it, because I talk about it with people from work and stuff, and it's like, oh my god, when does it stop? And I don't think it ever will stop.
It doesn't really.
But how you manage it probably evolves with the space or disposable income or selection. But I know what you mean when you're saying like we're not moaning. You do come across as quite, when you're talking about it, when an individual is talking about it, you can't help but come across as like a bit of entitlement.
Yeah,
it's like, oh my god, they brought out all of these toys and I want to collect all of them, but I can't house them all. And you're like, come on, man. There are genuine concerns in the world, and how many Optimus Primes we have isn't one of them.
It's very true, isn't it? When you hear, like, when Nemesis came out, kind of the first words on people's lips were, where am I going to house it? Not how am I going to afford it? What am I going to have to do to? It's like, well, I've already conceded that I'm going to be buying it, and then the first world problem is, how do I store it? Well, no, that's not. As you say, it's entitlement. It is a first world problem, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's fine, right? We as the consumer, have that choice where we can buy it or we cannot buy it.
Yes.
If you don't buy it, there's only one person really that's going to affect, and that's you. Hasbro is, I mean, yes, all right, you could say, oh, if everyone had that opinion, then Hasbro would have a problem because no one would buy it. Yes, but in reality, there's always going to be, for every one person that's not going to buy it, there's always going to be two people that do.
Yeah,
there is.
Absolutely.
That's the nature of the beast, because they've been going a long time, and
they will. It's not a short time.
Yeah, they will continue to exist. Because of that thing. I don't know. I feel like somewhere along the line, there's a breaking point for an individual, and that individual, their home situation might change. A single guy or a married guy without kids might have all of this disposable income, and then they have kids, and then the disposable income goes, and the first thing on the list when you're looking, do I buy the masterpiece or do I pay the electric bill? You pay the electric bill. You know, and that changes. And I think what I would say is the evolving characters and the continuing waves, it does let people jump in and jump off as they see fit.
That's a very good point. And so we sort of moan about it, for lack of a term, because we say, do we need another Optimus Prime? But what about people who, as you rightly say, and let's be honest, we're at the stage of 30s and 40s where that point of life comes into it. People could have dropped out and not even bothered with War for Cybertron. So if there is another Earthrise, someone might say, do you know what? Kids have got a bit older now. I now got a bit of money. I can now go back to my fandom. Oh, look, it's that Prime that I didn't get. And that's, with that revolving door, gives them someone to jump back into it. So that's another great way of looking at it. Whilst we look at it as exhaustion because we're still on the merry-go-round, that's the beauty about merry-go-rounds is they stop, you can hop on, hop off.
Agreed. That is a really good analogy because, you know, as a I don't know, so first film 2007, 16 years, wait till you've finished university, you now come back out of university, you've got a job, you want to get back into Transformers. Are you going to go on eBay and put Earthrise Optimus Prime, or are you going to go onto eBay and say Optimus Prime? Are you going to go onto Smith's and say Optimus Prime, or, you know, other retailers are available, you know, some of the independents and stuff like that? You know, you're not. You're going to go on and if, you know, Google search words are doing the right thing, you know, the first that latest iteration of the toy is going to be what comes up and slaps you in the face. So maybe there's some logic to that, you know, the fact that there's a new Optimus Prime or new Megatron every 8 months, because people are dipping in and dipping out.
So to the point then around exhaustion and, as you say, getting in and out of the fandom, going into the realms of third party with Masterpiece or Legends, it doesn't particularly matter, but less production runs like a third party company. Is that harder then for people who feel they have to get out because their lifestyles change and commitments change? But if you miss an offering with third party, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes you can miss it for good.
Yeah. And I think you don't probably even need to necessarily, you know, be coming out of the fandom or out of collecting, because for me, an example of that is Magic Square's Optimus Prime. You know, they had the first run, I missed it. The second run, very excited, they were getting a second run, and I missed it. And you're like, for God's sake, you know, and I'm still fully invested in it. So I think that will always be a bigger problem, because I think with third party, because the quality, I think, can vary. In my opinion, the quality can vary. I'm definitely one of those people that sits and waits. And it's like, oh, let's let a few people get it and see what they're like. And then by the time you pull the trigger, no one's got even left.
It's a very common problem, and one that I've been burned by many times, is that the QC lottery, and whilst it's a very good reason to wait, but again, it's exhaustion. But with third party, it's often driven by cost and space. You know, offerings come out, and when they do come out, even if you have to put in a pre-order and it can be months or years until the final payment comes, it might be the wrong time for you. You might have to wait for it to go. Then you hear the feedback that, no, this is actually great. And of course, you've waited too long. Now you want it and you can't have it. But of course, it can go the other way, where you can just jump in all invested, and it is a QC nightmare.
Yeah, we have a mutual friend that was very much looking forward to a Masterpiece version of Ultra Magnus that turned out to be, I think, as much an emotional wreckage as it was, you know, a physical one. But but you know, these are, and we're going down into a whole new realm of discussion in terms of quality and all the rest of it. But I think as a collector, you know, you haven't got an infinite budget. Well, I'm assuming you haven't. I don't. So you're lumping that chunk of budget on that character, assuming that the QC is going to be at a level where you're getting value for money, and then sometimes you're not, right? And it's not even as if, and I know what you're going to say, and it's not even as if you can then go, oh, do you know what? I'll sell it for what I paid for it, and you know, I'll move it on, because the chances are, by the time you do that, people will know that there's a QC issue.
And you end up selling it for less than what you paid for it just to get it out of your system. And that's where you get, it's a different topic for a different day, but that's where you get a little bit disheartened with some of the collectors. Things like that can sour you a little bit. It's a different type of exhaustion, isn't it? Whereas Chug and Hasbro will throw stuff out relentlessly that you feel you haven't got the space for it. Third party doesn't have the quantity of that. It comes out in lesser strands, but for typically more money. Certainly in the masterpiece scale, might not be the right time for you. When you get it, it can be an absolute nightmare that you want to be rid of it, and you have that fatigue carrying into the next figure. You're reminded of a bad experience. I've had that with X-Transpots, of which, of course, our common friend did as well with Ultra Magnus. But I had that with the Formula One repaint of Drag Strip. Broke first transformation, and I haven't touched an X-Transport figure since. I've actually got one on pre-order now, and I'm a little worried, but that kind of different type of exhaustion carries over.
Well, I mean, the greatest example is, you know, Warthog. You know, you reviewed him. You know, he's a chunk of cash. You've dedicated some, you know, you've dedicated as a collector some budget. Power Glide is one of your favorite characters. You go all in. You know, you get Fans Toys Warthog, but then what do you do when, you know, the transformation and the QC isn't great? You go, okay, I'm going to move it on. Are you going to get as much as what you paid for it?
Not at all. And you can't exactly return it due to unsatisfied customer, can you?
No.
So you're completely stuck. And you see a real difference in that between Chug and you know, third party. If the worst you've had, the absolute worst, unless you're going into Titan, some of the, you know, HasLab Unicron, which I'll quickly touch on in a second. But if you go into deluxe or even leader class, £55. And okay, that might not be so disposable to some people, but nevertheless, £55 or under, point blank, comes to mind. Because he didn't have hip skirts, and if that's not great for you, and if you feel that's not great, then what you spent £21, £25.
Yeah, you can get over
from that. You can recover from that quicker. When it comes to third party, it stings more, and I say it's a different type of exhaustion. I don't want to pick that up in case it decides to shatter on me, but it's a different type of exhaustion. And actually, I'll finish off this point with HasLab Unicron, because it's not third party, but it might as well be for its once in a lifetime amount of money. You know, is there a sense of exhaustion, not just transforming it, but is there a sense of exhaustion with this is a one and done deal? And I think even Hasbro laid it out as such. You're only going to get this figure once. It's very, very unlikely it's going to be available again. If it is, it's on the secondary market for considerably more money. And to just a point, and as we saw with Hugh's video, you know, you could be so fed up with it for its transformation or space killer. This feels like it's all coming to this point that we've been talking about in this one figure, that you want to move it on. You may get a fair bit of money for it, or you may just want to be rid of it for something that is really the center of all the problems crammed into one very large figure. Your experience may differ, because I can see.
I was going to say you make so many good points in like 2 sentences. I think
I'm not encouraging you to sell yours, by the way.
No. Do you know what? And I couldn't, because for me, I know I couldn't replace it for what I'd sell it for. And I think, for me, I didn't buy it as a toy. The value of money it was when I bought it, that's not a toy. That's a collection centerpiece.
Yeah.
It is a massive monster that is going to come into your house, is not going to contribute to the mortgage or the utility bills. It's going to come in and it's just going to sit there because you're not going to mess with it. From a space perspective, yeah, massively. With the space I have available, I couldn't have it in planet mode because I'm not brave enough to try and hang it from the ceiling. Two things are going to happen. There's going to be a hole in the ceiling and broken plastic on the carpet.
And the hole on the floor as it's gone through.
Yeah, and it's going to come through all the way through into the kitchen. So I have them in bot mode. But, without drawing attention to it, you can see how much space it takes up. But for me, would I buy it again? Yes, I would. Why would I buy it again? Because, like you said, it was a one and done. They knew there's never going to be anything like that again.
It's when you get those holy grails, you feel like, as to the point that you made at the start, if you like this figure, if you're prepared, even if you do or don't have an affiliation to it, but certainly if you do, if you want it, you'll buy it. Simple as that. It's you don't think about how am I going to store it, this, that, and the other. It's I'm getting a proper planet-sized Unicron. I've got to have it.
100%. And do you know what? If that's your approach, good luck to you. Because if without people like you, the manufacturers and stuff wouldn't build it. Okay, so you wouldn't even have the option. Yeah. We are at the option where we go, oh, shall I get it? Oh, it's a bit much. Oh, it's a bit spacey. Do you know what? I'm going to leave it. But you know what? Someone's going to buy it. Like I said earlier, someone's going to buy it. And then that makes sure that the next wave comes along, or the next character, or the next Titan, or the next, Legends core class figure comes along. Because without that, it's going to remove the choice because you're not going to be able to get it.
Yeah. And as you say, if people don't buy it, then maybe Hasbro said, you know what, this well's dried up. We're going to lock Transformers away now because clearly people aren't interested.
Yeah. And I, for one, still want the choice whether I buy it or not.
Okay, there we go. I think we covered off quite a lot of topics here today on this episode of All Talk No Shot. So it just leaves me to say thank you, Pete, for joining me on this duo.
Thank you for having me.
That's great.
Thank you for having me. It was a really good conversation.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Thank you so much for coming along. I hope you enjoyed this as well at home. Do leave comments about your collecting experiences in the comments below. Do you suffer from collection exhaustion as well? Do you have to take some time away? Do you have to think about what your next installment's going to be, what your next purchase is going to be, and how your collection is going to change in the years to come? Do leave some comments below. I'd love to know what you think. And thanks for watching. And as always, we will see you on the next one.